Welcome to new Neo Storybook channel.
Let's start with the beautiful story. The Beauty and the Beast. A beautiful tale of inner strength. In a distant land, many years ago, there existed a quaint village surrounded by gently sloping hills and dense, ancient forests. In this peaceful village, there resided a young woman named Akara, whose reputation extended far beyond the village borders. While many spoke of her physical beauty, it was her boundless kindness and deep wisdom that truly captivated those who knew her. Unlike the villagers who often admired her for her external appearance, Akara herself placed little importance on such fleeting qualities. She valued the beauty that lay within the purity of one's soul, the strength found in good character, and the immeasurable power of a compassionate heart. Akara shared her modest life with her father, Magnus, a once thriving merchant whose fortunes had sadly diminished over the years. There was a time when Magnus' trade routes brought him great wealth and success, but a series of tragic misfortunes had left him with little more than memories of his former prosperity. Fierce storms had wrecked his ships at sea, and ruthless bandits had pillaged his caravans, stripping him of his goods. Though these losses weighed heavily upon him, both Akara and her father found solace in one another's company. They resided in a small, humble cottage on the village's outskirts, where they cultivated their own crops and lived a life of simplicity. Despite their hardships, they found peace in the quiet rhythm of their days and remained grateful for the little they had. One fateful day, word reached the village that a ship, long thought to be lost at sea, had finally arrived at the harbor. This vessel, once part of Magnus' fleet, had been missing for years and was believed to have perished in one of the many storms that had devastated his business. The ship, now miraculously returned, was said to be laden with valuable goods and treasures that could potentially restore Magnus' fortunes and lift his family out of their financial struggles. Filled with renewed hope and a sense of purpose, Magnus wasted no time in preparing for his journey to the city, where he intended to reclaim what rightfully belonged to him. As he readied himself to depart, he turned to his beloved daughter, Akara, and asked if there was anything special she wished for him to bring back as a gift. In her usual modest and unassuming manner, Akara smiled softly and replied, "Father, I desire nothing grand or extravagant. If you can, simply bring me a single rose." Her request was simple, reflecting her gentle nature and her lack of desire for material wealth. Magnus smiled at the simplicity of her request and set off for the city. Chapter 1: The Lost Path. The journey was long, and as Magnus traveled the winding roads, his heart was filled with a mixture of anticipation and unease. He dared to hope that this long-awaited ship would bring an end to their hardships, yet a shadow of doubt lingered. Upon finally arriving in the bustling city, Magnus' hopes were swiftly dashed. Though the ship had indeed returned, its cargo had been subjected to exorbitant taxes, leaving only a fraction of the treasures he had once possessed. The meager profits that remained were barely enough to cover the heavy debts he had incurred over the years. Faced with this harsh reality, Magnus was left with nothing to reclaim his former prosperity. Disheartened and with a sense of defeat weighing heavily on his shoulders, he reluctantly turned his horse toward home, burdened by the thought of returning empty-handed. As Magnus made his way back home, an unexpected and violent storm descended upon him with little warning. The once clear skies grew ominously dark, swirling with thick clouds that blotted out the sun. Thunder boomed across the heavens, and soon the rain began to fall in relentless torrents, drenching Magnus to the bone. The wind howled through the trees, turning the path ahead into a murky blur. His horse, exhausted and struggling against the fierce elements, could go no further, and Magnus realized that he was hopelessly lost in a strange, dense forest. With the familiar road completely obscured and no signs of refuge in sight, Magnus pressed on through the dark woods, his heart pounding as he battled against the cold and wet. Each step seemed to draw him deeper into the unknown, and with every passing moment, the forest grew darker and more foreboding. Desperate to find shelter from the storm, Magnus wandered aimlessly, praying for a safe place to rest as the storm raged on around him. After what felt like endless hours of wandering through the dense, shadowy forest, Magnus' weary eyes finally caught sight of something extraordinary. A vast, towering castle that seemed to rise out of nowhere, hidden deep within the woods. Its imposing stone walls were cloaked in thick layers of ivy, giving it an ancient, almost forgotten appearance. The windows were dark and empty, as though no light or life had touched them in years. Yet, despite the eerie stillness surrounding it, the castle gates stood wide open, as if silently beckoning him to enter. With no other options and the storm still raging, Magnus hesitantly led his exhausted horse through the open gates and into the castle grounds. There, he found a stable, where he carefully tended to the worn-out animal, offering it what little comfort he could. Once his horse was safely inside, Magnus turned his attention toward the grand entrance of the castle. Cautiously, he approached the heavy doors, his footsteps echoing on the stone as a sense of unease settled over him. Much to his astonishment, as Magnus reached the grand door, it slowly creaked open on its own, as though some unseen force had been waiting for him. Warily, he stepped inside, his eyes widening at the sight before him. The castle's interior was nothing short of magnificent, richly adorned with luxurious tapestries, ornate furniture, and gleaming chandeliers. Despite its opulence, an unsettling silence filled the air, making the grandeur feel almost ghostly in its stillness. As Magnus moved further into the hall, he noticed a large hearth where a roaring fire burned, casting a warm glow across the room. In front of the fire, a grand table had been prepared with a sumptuous feast, golden platters piled high with food, goblets filled with wine. Yet, not a soul was to be seen. The strange hospitality left him uneasy, but the storm still raged outside, and the cold gnawed at his bones. Hesitant yet grateful for the unexpected kindness, Magnus sat down and cautiously partook of the meal. Afterward, he settled near the fire, letting its warmth soothe his tired body, though a lingering sense of mystery kept his thoughts restless as he rested by the crackling flames. Chapter 2: The Forbidden Garden. The next morning, Magnus prepared to leave the castle. He gathered his belongings, grateful for the brief respite from the storm, but as he made his way through the expansive courtyard, something extraordinary caught his attention. A stunning rose garden lay before him, bursting with vibrant colors and blooming flowers that seemed to glow in the early light. The sight was enchanting, and Magnus couldn't help but be drawn to its beauty. Memories of his beloved daughter, Ikara, flooded his mind, and he recalled her simple request for a single rose. Overcome with emotion, he stepped into the garden, inhaling the sweet fragrance that filled the air. As he wandered among the flowers, his fingers brushed against the petals of various blooms, each more exquisite than the last. Finally, he spotted a single perfect rose, its velvety petals a deep crimson that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. With a gentle hand, he carefully plucked the rose, knowing that it would bring joy to Akara and serve as a cherished token of his journey. Suddenly, the air around him shifted, and a powerful voice boomed from behind. "How dare you steal from my garden?" Suddenly, Magnus was startled from his thoughts as a towering figure emerged from the shadows of the garden. As he turned, his breath caught in his throat at the sight before him. It was a beast, a fearsome creature with menacing sharp claws and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. The voice that resonated from the beast was deep and powerful, rumbling like distant thunder echoing across the stormy sky. Its dark, thick fur bristled in the morning breeze, and the beast's presence was undeniably imposing, filling the courtyard with an air of intimidation. Yet, as Magnus' gaze locked with the creature's, he noticed something unexpected, a flicker of humanity behind those fierce eyes. It was a haunting glimmer, suggesting a depth of feeling and emotion that belied the beast's fearsome exterior. Despite the initial surge of fear, Magnus found himself captivated, sensing that there was more to this creature than met the eye. "Forgive me!" Magnus pleaded, falling to his knees. "I only took the rose for my daughter. She asked for nothing else." The beast let out a fierce growl, his anger unmistakable. "You have the audacity to steal from me? For this offense, you will pay the price. Your place is now in my castle for all eternity." Terrified, Magnus begged for his freedom. He explained that he had a daughter who depended on him. Hearing this, the beast's eyes narrowed. "You speak of your daughter," he said slowly. "Bring her to me, and I will release you. She will take your place." Magnus was filled with dread at the idea, yet the beast offered him no alternative. Reluctantly, he agreed to return with Akara, and with the rose clutched tightly in his hand, he was permitted to leave the castle. Chapter 3: A Daughter's Sacrifice. When Magnus returned home, weighed down by sorrow, he recounted the entire tale to Akara: the grand castle, the fearsome beast, and the dreadful agreement. Akara listened in silence, her face calm but thoughtful. Despite her fear, her love for her father was strong, and she knew she had no choice but to face the beast and save him. "I will go in your place, father," Akara said softly, her voice filled with resolve. Magnus protested, but Akara would not be swayed. She packed her belongings, kissed her father goodbye, and set off on the journey to the beast's castle. Chapter 4: The Enchanted Castle. When Akara arrived at the castle, she was taken aback by its stunning beauty, even though a heavy gloom enveloped it. The gates swung open as if anticipating her arrival, guiding her inside. In the grand hall, the beast stood waiting, his eyes fixed intently on her every move. "Welcome," the beast said, his voice deep and resonant. "You are brave to come in your father's place." Akara stood resolutely, masking her fear with unwavering determination. "I am here to honor my father's promise. I will remain in this castle, but you must release him." The beast nodded. Your father is free. But now, this is your home. In the beginning, the castle felt like a prison to Akara. The beast kept his distance, only joining her during meals. While he was never cruel, his presence was unsettling. She spent her days wandering the castle, which seemed to possess a life of its own. Furniture shifted slightly, curtains swayed in the breeze, and faint whispers echoed through the halls, though she never encountered another soul. Her favorite spot became the rose garden, where her father had picked that fateful flower. It was a tranquil haven, offering solace from the castle's overwhelming opulence. There, she often sat in quiet reflection, thinking of her father and the life she had left behind. Chapter 5: A Heart of Kindness. As the weeks slipped by, Akara began to observe subtle nuances about the beast that piqued her curiosity. Despite his formidable appearance, she discovered a surprising gentleness woven into his character. He would often leave carefully chosen books for her to read, each one filled with tales that transported her to distant lands and vibrant adventures. In addition, he would present her with elegant clothing, fabrics that felt soft against her skin, as though he wanted to ensure her comfort and well-being. Though his actions revealed a considerate nature, he maintained a respectful distance, never intruding upon her solitude. He would sit in the shadows, watching her with a gaze that held a mixture of longing and trepidation, as if he were afraid to approach but yearned for connection. This duality, his fierce exterior paired with a nurturing spirit, captivated Akara, leading her to question her initial fears and consider the possibility that beneath the surface, the beast was more than just a monster. One evening, while dining together, the beast finally spoke to her in earnest. "Do you hate me?" he asked quietly, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. Akara looked up, surprised by the vulnerability in his tone. "I do not hate you," she replied. "You have treated me with kindness, despite my fear." The beast appeared relieved by her response, and from that moment, their relationship began to shift. They spent more time together strolling through the gardens, conversing by the fire, and sharing tales of their pasts. Akara discovered that the beast had once been a prince, cursed by a powerful sorceress due to his arrogance and cruelty. The only way to break the curse was for someone to love him despite his monstrous appearance. Chapter 6: The Growing Affection. Days melted into weeks, and weeks unfurled into months. As time passed, Akara found herself developing a deep fondness for the beast. He was no longer the terrifying monster she had initially perceived. Instead, she discovered a soul weighed down by loneliness and regret, hidden beneath his fearsome exterior. She admired his strength and the genuine desire he showed to change and become better. One evening, as they sat together, watching the sun dip below the horizon and paint the sky with hues of orange and purple, the beast turned to her with a vulnerable expression. "Do you think it's possible for someone like me to be loved?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Akara paused, not out of doubt, but because she was slowly recognizing that her feelings for the beast had shifted profoundly. "Yes," she replied softly, her heart swelling with newfound affection. "I believe it is." In that moment, the beast's eyes, which had long been clouded by a trace of sadness, brightened with a glimmer of hope, as if a light had been ignited within him. Chapter 7: A Plea for Freedom. Despite the deepening bond between them, Ikara missed her father terribly. One evening, she gathered her courage and approached the beast with a heartfelt request. "Please," she implored, "let me visit my father. He is old, and I worry about his health. I promise I will come back." The beast's expression darkened, and for a moment, Ikara felt a wave of dread, fearing he might refuse her plea. But after a tense pause, he nodded. "You may go, but you must return within a week, or I will die." Ikara was taken aback by the gravity of his words, but she agreed nonetheless. The beast then gifted her a magical mirror, allowing her to see him and the castle, no matter where she traveled. Chapter 8: The Return Home. Ikara returned to her village, and her father was filled with joy at her arrival. She dedicated her days to caring for him, sharing tales of the enchanted castle and the beast, though she carefully omitted her feelings for the creature. As the days went by, Ikara's heart grew increasingly heavy. She found herself missing the beast more than she had ever anticipated. On the 7th day, she gazed into the magical mirror and was alarmed to see the beast lying in the rose garden, weak and fading. Panic surged through her. She had stayed too long. Without a second thought, she mounted her horse and rode as fast as she could back to the castle. Chapter 9: The Breaking of the Curse. When Ikara arrived, Ikara was met with an unsettling silence that enveloped the castle. The absence of the usual sounds made her heart race with anxiety. She hurried toward the rose garden, her footsteps quickening with each passing moment. As she reached the garden, a sense of dread washed over her when she spotted the beast lying among the vibrant blooms. His breaths came in shallow gasps, and his eyes were closed, as if he were teetering on the edge of unconsciousness. The sight sent a pang of fear through her, and she rushed to his side, desperate to revive him. "No," she cried, kneeling beside him. "Please, don't leave me." Tears flowed down Ikara's cheeks as she recognized the depth of her feelings for him. "I love you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I love you just as you are." As her words lingered in the air, a brilliant light surrounded the beast, causing Ikara to step back and shield her eyes. When the light dimmed, she gasped in disbelief. The beast had vanished, replaced by a strikingly handsome prince. "Ikara," the prince said, his voice familiar yet transformed. "You have broken the curse." Stunned, Ikara reached out, and the prince took her hand. "It was never about the curse," she said softly. "I love you, beast or man." The prince smiled warmly, his eyes sparkling with gratitude and affection. In that moment, they stood together in the rose garden, the fragrance of blooming flowers enveloping them like a tender embrace. The once shadowed castle around them began to transform, shedding its gloom and radiating with vibrant life once more. Sunlight filtered through the trees, illuminating the grounds and highlighting the beauty of their surroundings. Joyful colors returned to the castle's walls, and laughter seemed to echo through the halls as if the very structure itself rejoiced in their newfound happiness. With Ikara by his side, the prince felt a sense of belonging he had longed for during his years of isolation. Their hearts swelled with hope, and in that enchanted garden, they knew that their love had the power to conquer all darkness. Thus, Ikara and the prince, once a fearsome beast, found their happiness not merely in the prince's restored beauty but in the profound connection they had forged through their shared experiences. Their love blossomed from a foundation of kindness and understanding, built on the acceptance of each other's true selves. They learned that true beauty lies not in outward appearances but in the depth of one's heart and the strength of their bond. Together, they navigated the challenges of life with grace and compassion, always supporting one another through every trial. The castle became a vibrant home filled with laughter and joy, where their love flourished. In each other, they had discovered a partnership that transcended the superficial, celebrating the essence of love that resides in empathy, trust, and an unwavering commitment to one another. In their union, they had unearthed a treasure more valuable than any riches, a love that would endure through time and trials, lighting their lives with warmth and hope. Thank you for listening to The Beauty and the Beast, a beautiful tale of inner strength. If you'd like to hear more captivating stories and content, make sure to subscribe to new Neo Storybook channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss your favorite stories. Your support means the world, and it helps me continue creating content that you love. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful take on the timeless tale. Your feedback is incredibly important to us. Let me know your good thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.